Okay, this is module 2, talking about the certification process. I'll be focusing mostly on the process in the USA, and this module is really there just to give you a little bit of context necessary to kind of understand where we're coming from when we start talking about safe software, in other words, safety critical software. The references, I would definitely recommend going to the FAA site. There's a lot more detail on some of the stuff that I talk about, as well as these two other references that are available on my website. So if you look at a typical airplane, there is a variety of different subsystems on board, ranging from the entertainment system to the flight management system and the autopilot. Now what you see in some of these systems in this particular picture is that they have an associated TSO number, which remember stands for Technical Standard Order that we saw in the previous module. That means that there is actually a document out there that specifies exactly how this thing must be built, what requirements must be built. And it also means that if a manufacturer decides to manufacture this particular item, they can follow the TSO and get then not only design approval but also approval to make it. Well, of course, airplanes do not just fly within a country, they fly often internationally. So you see that a lot of the rules and operational regulations are defined actually at international level by an organization called the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO. We're not going to talk too much about this organization, exactly what they do. We're not going to talk a lot about what's going on in Europe or the rest of the world either, but what I did is on the next couple of slides, I just provided you with a little bit of information regarding the organization, regarding some of the standards and recommended practices to make, like the SARPs that you see on this particular slide, and also a little bit about what's going on in Europe in terms of certification organizations. But what I'm really going to focus on is really on what's going on in the US. And as I said, this is really just to shape a context. If you would give a definition of certification, it's really the legal recognition through issuance of a certificate by a civil aviation authority that a product, service, organization, or person complies with that authority's requirements. So if I want to make a product and I want to install this product on an aircraft, I need to be able to get this product certified. This certificate needs to be provided by an authority for that particular country. So in the US, this is the Federal Aviation Administration. Well, let's look at the legal aspects. If you go to the law of the land, you see Title 49 of the United States Code, if you would be a legal person, that is, defines actually the Department of Transportation, but also the available aviation program. And in the aviation programs, it specifies the basic two missions of the Federal Aviation Administration, which is to promote safety of flight of civil aircraft and issue standards for design, materials, workmanship, and performance of aircraft engines, propellers, and appliances. And second, to ensure aviation safety and public trust. Besides Title 49, it kind of determines what the FAA needs to do, so in other words, what it needs to do to certify products. There's also Title 14, which is a code of federal regulations that specify all the rules that are out there for aircraft engines, etc., etc. For example, Part 21 of this particular Title 14 would be certification procedures and project and parts. Well, besides that, there is two more non-regulatory documents like advisory circulars and the FAA orders, and I'll get back to these on the next couple of slides. So if you look, for example, at Part 21 of Title 14, and typically we refer to it as Federal Aviation Regulation 21, for example, or Part 21, then that defines really all the certification procedures for products and parts. So if you, for example, go to this risingup.com website, you can find out what these regulations, these Part 21 regulations look like. And of course, they're regulations, they're legal language, so they're fairly concise and concisely written. Well, part of this would be, for example, that a subsection of part 21, which is 191, which deals with experimental certificates. I mean, I just bring this example up because this is what we actually use for some of our aircraft, because as a university they're in experimental mode. So besides part 21, there's also airworthiness standards related to each and every one of a couple of different categories. Like part 23 are just the kind of commuter aircraft category, whereas part 25 are the big guys. So these are the transport category aircraft, the aircraft that you would take if you fly within the United States or fly overseas, but also, for example, cargo aircraft. Then you see also that rotorcraft actually has two different other categories, part 27, part 29, and even balloons have their own category. Well, since they are so important, engines and propellers do have their own category as well in terms of airworthiness standards. And what we saw a couple things, for example, one rule under part 23 we saw already, which was part 23.1309, which talked about these failure classification I talked about in module 1. A couple other relevant ones are part 43, which is related to rules and regulations for maintenance, preventive maintenance, and part 91 is very important, which are just operating and flight rules. You know, typically in aircraft, the parts need to be certified, but there's also rules with how it needs to be operated. What do you need to do to actually be able to take off, to fly it? What are the rules when you're flying? These are all specified in part 91. Okay, so I told you I kind of earlier related to the advisory circular. This is kind of a document that the FAA publishes, which is non-regulatory, but it still is related to some of the rules that are defined in the FARs. For example, if you looked at AC25309, or for small aircraft, 231309, describes the various means of showing compliance with requirements in the paragraph 25309. So it gives you additional material that you can use in addition to the often very concise paragraph in the regulations. That's what we call the advisory circular. So if you go to a rule and regulation, you read it, you find it's often very small, very short. Sometimes you can find more information by going to an associated advisory circular.